Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Blow in the Cartridge podcast. I am the host for today. I am Woodhouse. I am joined by my good friends Sean
Hello, everyone.
and Alex.
Notice how he didn't refer to me as his friend. He referred to Sean as friend. I'm not his friend though.
No, you're not my friend. No, no. Everyone thinks that we hate each other, but I think we get on.
We
okay.
all get along pretty well actually.
Yeah.
We talk all the time, so.
Yeah. So the last couple of weeks we started with Final Fantasy VII, and last week, 2 weeks ago, sorry, we did Sweet Home. And today we are going to talk about a very special game, I feel. It is Sean's pick. Would you like to do an introduction, sir?
Yes, I would. Today's topic is Xcom Enemy Unknown, which is a turn-based tactical game released in 2012 by Firaxis. Interesting story about this game is that it's a sequel to a 90s strategy series called XCOM. There were 4 or 5 of them, and they were all strategy games. And as happened in the mid-2000s to most indie titles, it was bought, in this case by 2K Games, and originally was scheduled to be a first-person shooter rather than a tactical role-playing game. That game did get made. It was known as the Bureau XCOM Declassified. But fortunately for all of us, 2K apparently did have some sense, and they also sent to Firaxis the idea of let's kind of remake and bring up to current times the original tactical game that everybody loved. And so we got XCOM Enemy Unknown in 2012. And I have to say kudos to Firaxis for this game, which I love and I will sing the praises of in the next hour, because prior to this, they were known for making Sid Meier games, the Civilization games and such. And this ain't no Civilization 5. This is a very different game, and it's a very good game where you take control of a commander who oversees operations for XCOM, a global response team that's set up to respond to an alien invasion of Earth. Gameplay split between some RPG battles on the ground, along with some base management. And what makes this game great is that you go back and forth. You do a little bit of battles on the ground, tactical RPG stuff. Then you come back and you do some base management using the resources that you've gained to make yourself better in the fights. You get the stuff in the fights to make your base better, and it's this wonderful feedback loop. The game's also really notorious for its difficulty. Every character in this game has permadeath, and unlike a lot of games, there is no turning back. The game gets harder no matter how well you are doing, which is intended. This is a game where you're supposed to game over and have to start over, and there have been many players, maybe some on this call, who have had some suffering and some crippling defeats. Yes, that's right. John can speak more to that in a minute. But this is what makes XCOM special. It's the crushing defeats, but also the fantastic victories. And, despite its difficulty, it's been a beloved game by many. It's had several expansions. There was the sequel, XCOM 2, in 2016. And in my estimation, it is a must-play for anyone who enjoys strategy or tactical role-playing games. I would love to hear from you, John, and from you, Alex, your history with the game. And we all replayed this for the podcast. So, let's tell the listeners, how well did it go? Or maybe how well did it not go?
So I'd just like to say, actually, the reason why we picked this in particular is because we set like a ratio of how how old a game should be before we can classify it as a retro game, and we decided on 10 years. And Enemy Within is a 2012 game. It's exactly 10 years. The versions that Sean and I played is Enemy Within, and that is the expansion that came out a year later in 2013. So the only one of us who played the proper 10-year-old game is Alex there.
Look at me following the rules.
Yeah, I had access to it. I think I bought both versions of the game. I was definitely excited for this. I was a big fan of Civilization. I'd never played any of the original XCOM games, but I definitely was excited to play this new version that came out in 2012. And I got about halfway through the game before realizing that I had to build these specific things called satellites to stop people leaving me, which we'll get back into later on. But I quit that game maybe 3 times and came back to it every time. And that should probably paint a little bit of a picture as to how addictive the gameplay actually is. It's not without its faults, don't get me wrong, but it definitely has a certain something that keeps you going. Alex, it was your first time playing this game, so how do you feel about it?
So it was my very first time ever playing any XCOM game, and I can say I totally enjoyed it. I played the original, no expansion, nothing, XCOM Enemy Unknown, and I think I described it best as being it's like a board game. It's like a really fun board game that you're playing against a computer. And there's multiplayer, but we didn't really get into that. But it's very addictive and it's very strategic. And when you die, when you lose one of your guys, especially after you built them up, it hurts because you've done so much work and you may have had this character since the beginning of the game and they're gone. And everything they taught, everything they learned was gone. If they have psi abilities or anything special, it's gone. Thankfully, you can keep their equipment, but like, oh my goodness, it hurt you so much. I think the game took a while, I think, to grab hold of me. I have a background in strategic games, so I didn't mess up, really. I played through the whole game, and I didn't have too many difficulties. I built satellites, I did all the extra stuff. I didn't read anything about the game. I just kind of listened to the prompts and really paid attention and really thought, what should I be doing if this is like a real alien invasion? Makes sense that you'd want satellites monitoring things. Like, that seemed ideal.
But that's not as... I was a stupid person and I did not realize
it's not as much fun as buying a new laser rifle, like, because you don't do anything with the satellite, you know? No. So you want the weapons and the armor and all the cool stuff. That said, it really just... the feedback loop is the best way to put it. I think Sean really summed it up well, that it keeps saying you want to go back. So there are a couple times where I was like, I'm done. And I was like, but like maybe I'll see the enemy. Or like, I think I did message you all and say, I'm done. And then Sean was like, oh, have you seen this enemy yet? And I was like, no, but now I'm going to go see that enemy because he said something. And like, I thought I was mowing down the last like 2 or 3 battles. Like I could have stood out in the open and shot my whole load at all my enemies and been fine. And no, there's still more I got to do. Still more stuff coming up. I think what stood out to me the most with playing this game, though, was the AI. It actually, there wasn't a good way to exploit it. I could, like, normally when I played these games, I don't want to say like I look to like cheese it or break the game, but you look for like the blind spots in the AI, right? You look for what they don't do so you can focus in on that area.
So right now, Alex is totally stealing my notes. He's looking at my notes, my positives that I want to bring to the game. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about the positives of XCOM Enemy Unknown. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We're about ready to begin our positive debate section of this podcast on XCOM Enemy Unknown. I've decided to start, and I'm going to now that I have control of my notes again, and Alex has stopped looking at what I was going to say. I'm going to put forward that the game has it makes every mission exciting. I knew what I was coming into. I'd played the game several times before we started making a way through this for the podcast, and I knew what I was coming. I was full of confidence. I set out knowing what all the mechanics in the game were, what was coming, and that I got about 4 missions in before I lost somebody, and I did not give the game enough respect, and the game forces you to respect it. One thing I would like to say is that if you ever played a game called Left 4 Dead, they made a big push on what was known as the game director, and that made sure that if you were doing too well, the game would come back and just squash your party. And I feel like XCOM has that exact same mechanic. If it feels like you're doing too well, it will come and it will destroy you. Just to make you remember what it feels like to be crushed under the heel of these alien invaders. Because the game is, it's so good at making you feel things, making you bring out the emotions of like, oh, this guy needs to hit this enemy, otherwise he's going to shoot my one guy who's only got one health left, and then you miss.
Hold on,
And then
you
your
had guys
character
running
is
around.
gone.
You had
Sorry,
guys running around. You had guys running around with 1 health. Were you not playing the game right? That sounds to me like you were making a mistake to begin with.
So, like I said before,
Kinda
I had too much
embarrassing for
confidence
you.
going into it. I thought I could play the system, and I got played. Okay, there were several points. I probably should have said this in our previous bit there, but I had 2 party wipes, 2 full party wipes in this game, and they happened back to back, and I ended up with at one point having only 2 operational people in my XCOM unit. So yeah, I at that point I went back to basics, and I definitely gave the game the respect that it deserves. And since then, I think I've lost 1 person. The game, like I said before, though, the game forces you to become very attached to the people that you have running around taking your orders. At a certain point, you even get they get given nicknames, just so that you go like, hey, there's DJ, there's Data, there's they don't become
Ghost.
like,
Yeah.
there's Ghost, yeah, there's all these names being thrown around, but I remember DJ because DJ kept panicking and then killing my own teammates, but surviving himself. He would kill his own teammates and then manage to get extracted out of the mission. And he's still in my party. He's rose through the ranks, and I immediately turned that guy into a machine person, by the way, so he couldn't panic anymore, because twice he panicked and killed my own teammates. So this game is full of moments like that. I think we're all going to have like little bits where we tell our stories about what the game had in store for us, and that is one of the best things about this game, and one of the best things about any strategy game that we can talk about here. Sean, you want to take over from here?
Yeah, sure, yes. So this was my 6th, May 7th time playing through the game. And the reason I didn't play Enemy Unknown was because I decided to try something different. I was going to try to play it on my phone, which only has Enemy Within. There isn't a version of Enemy Unknown that's on your phone. And I will say my biggest challenge was fighting with the phone controls. Play this game on PC, folks. It's a PC game. It's meant to be played on PC. Portability is great, but it's a much better experience on PC. But apart from the problems with my phone, yes, I definitely had a moment probably halfway through the game where I finished a mission and I went into our chat for this podcast and I said, John, Alex, I think there's an AI director here, because what happened here is nothing short of bullshit. And it's funny. I only lost a couple of units because I'd played through it a few times. I played normal Iron Man, which is the standard version where the game auto saves. So if I made a mistake, it was permanent. But because I'd played it so many times, normal was simple enough that I only lost a few units. But I was constantly on the verge. The number of missions where I was by the skin of my teeth, half of my characters were on the verge of death before making it to the end, was uncomfortably high. And it felt like every time things were getting easy, the game would throw me a curveball. And the one that I always think about, we were assaulting one of the ships. We'd shot the ship down, it had crashed. And we go into a hallway, and we managed to uncover 3 separate pods of enemies all at once. So you've got, call it 7 enemies looking at you. And when you go to run around the corner to try and hide from them, I then uncovered another squad. I don't know exactly how many pods of enemies there were. I do know that by the end of my second turn, I had uncovered 14 enemies simultaneously. And the fact that I was able to get out of that is nothing short of a miracle. But you're right, John. It's what makes the game special, is that no matter how many times you've played through it, they always find ways to challenge you and to make you feel like, oh, this was good. One of my favorite missions in Enemy Within happens. It's a random mission, and it's a mission that sends you to Nova Scotia, I believe. It's up in Canada, and it's a mission on a fishing dock. And if you played Enemy Within, you know the mission, because it's only in the expansion, and it is, to me, the best one in the entire game. And it's a mission that's the same every single time. I'll talk in a moment about what I think is great about that. But I got it in my second month, which is way, way earlier than any character should ever be prepared for. And so I was like, oh, crap, because you can't say no. But it was the kind of mission where if you do it in month 2, you're probably looking at a squad wipe. And
hey, guess what happened when I did that mission?
Right.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't lose any units, but every single unit was fighting for life. And it managed to take something that I figured I was going to say, well, I've done this before. I know what's coming. And because of the timing of it, it still was just as intense and as gripping as it was the very first time. Because I will always remember the very first time I did that mission. It's like it's a top 5 moment for me of all time, because just the way the game ramps up tension with that mission. There's a timer, there's bombing squads. It's just it's great. I almost don't want to say too much because John apparently didn't even get to the good stuff. He managed to get wiped before it gets good. It's really special. But the other thing I'll say, I really appreciate the game's balance between structured difficulty and procedurally generated difficulty. And I think anybody who's a gamer who's in the loop on like how the news talks about game development understands that what I mean when I say procedural generation is the things where it's randomly chosen from a group of things. Minecraft is the famous example. Everything is procedurally generated. Within XCOM,
there's a term for it now, isn't there? It's roguelites. Basically, lots of people use that term to describe randomly generated stuff. So there are other mechanics based with that, but there's lots of random elements involved with that term.
Yeah. So when I think of roguelike, I think games where even the levels themselves are randomly generated. In XCOM, the levels themselves, it's a series of maps.
They're like 10 fixed maps that you go.
Yeah, it's more than 10, but yes, it's
about 10. It's like a dozen,
right?
Maybe.
But the enemies are random. The enemies are completely random, except in a few key cases. So there's a mission where you assault the alien base. There's a mission where the aliens assault your base in the expansion. There's the assault of a battleship. If you manage to shoot down a battleship, you climb aboard the ship and you kind of walk all the way through. There's the final mission on the mothership. All of those missions they're actually structured. The enemies are always the same every time that you do it. And so it's like the game knows that when you get to a really important point in the game, let's not randomize this. This is an important story-driven battle. We want to make sure that we've completely balanced the experience so that every player gets the same experience that we intended. Whereas the random saucer battles or the random, terror missions, those are completely randomized. You could get a totally random assortment of enemies or of things laid out. And I kind of just appreciate that. I also appreciated that enemies always come at the same time on the calendar. So, we talk about it ramps up, but it ramps up in very set increments. Every 30 days, a new group of enemies is arriving. And so if you've played a few times like I have, you're like, all right, this is the month when I can start to expect these enemies, and you can start to sort of plan accordingly. And it's just it brings it all together. You get some control, but not enough. You definitely
you're always on the cusp, aren't you? You're always on the cusp of losing control. It's one of those things that it does so well that just like if you're thinking about the rest of the game, there are certain elements that drag it down a little bit, but that element in particular is just it's best in its class. I feel like.
I don't particularly like games that make me stressed, but I think stressed is the default in XCOM. You're always stressed about something. And I think for whatever reason, it just really, really resonates with me. And if you're not feeling overwhelmed, then you're not playing XCOM.
So Alex, you love stressful games, don't you?
So I'm just going to come out here and say it. I played Enemy Unknown for the first time on normal. Not Iron Man, but normal. But I handed whoever you believe in. I didn't save scum, and I'm just going to say this. The game's not that hard. It's really not. And here's the trick to the game for all the boys and girls listening out there and everyone in between. Just take it slow. If you go slow, if you take your time, if you play conservatively, you'll be okay. I gave John some flack for having a unit with 1 health. If you have a unit with 1 health, just leave them behind. Leave them in the back. They'll be fine. They're probably not going to get hit. And if they do get hit, then they move too far forward. So leave them behind. So I went into this game completely blind. I lost 6 units throughout the whole game. And those were, I lost 2 in the tutorial, battle I had to do, or 2 or 3 maybe, and then I lost 2 early on, and then I lost 1 in the very, very last mission. Um, and I'm okay with that. And I was trying to not look up any guides. The only time I did anything close to I saved and reloaded a whole bunch was on the 3rd mission. Like I was doing something. I was just testing out what everything did. I was just seeing what all the commands did and kind of feeling out the AI, just seeing what it did. And I was like, all right, well, and in this, all these guys died. So I'm reload. Oh, what happens if I push this or try this? They all died. Because the game doesn't give you a fantastic tutorial.
It does not.
And then we'll get to that later. But what I learned and what I learned to respect is this game does not reward you going in like Rambo. It rewards you for playing smart and for keeping your guys together. You can have a weak squad and find a powerful enemy, but if you do the bare minimum of keeping your guys intact, then even some of the strongest bad guys in the game, even some of the strongest units you'll find, they'll die if all your guys hit it on, like if all 6 of your characters hit it in 1 turn, it'll probably die. It's probably not going to stand a chance.
So a point I do want to make to everyone, obviously Sean and I played a different version, an expansion version. There's a particular currency there's introduced in the expansion that kind of forces you to go forwards because it's on a timer. So whilst that is accurate and that is a very effective way to play Enemy Unknown, Enemy Within, it kind of hampers you a little bit if you play too defensively.
Well, I can only assess the version that came out in 2012, John. So I am. And I'll say this, while you're right, I can see where that might hamper it. Still, playing conservatively, I went through the game with essentially one squad. They almost never really got injured. I had a couple of B squad guys, but most of the time I had 1 assault person, 1 sniper, 2 heavy units, and 2 support units. And I was fine. You know what I did? The heavy units, once I got, because there's a big element of capturing aliens and capturing their weaponry so you can study it and research it and build up your own stuff. After I'd gotten enough of that stuff, I blew up all my units. I used rockets. My heavy units were walking around with 2 grenades and 2 rockets and a shredder rocket, and that's 5 explosive things. They destroyed cover, they destroyed enemies, they just mowed through. I had sniper cleanup, I had assault cleanup, I had support keep them alive. My support units became my psi units and mine sprayed them from across the map. It was incredible. But you know what? I didn't go rushing in, so it's not my fault. You all don't know how to play, apparently. You all just rushed in, had squad wipes or whatever. Y'all need an expert like me to teach you how to play, and that's how you play this game. That said, I think one of the things that draws me in, what you said with the gameplay, with the gameplay loop that you're talking about earlier, about how it just keeps you going, that draws you in, but I think what keeps you is you get kind of attached to these guys. You get kind of attached to your little units. And making sure they survive. And I don't know, like I had a mostly female squad, and so I changed up their hair color so I could know which one was which just at a glance. Like I had one with blue, red, green. Okay,
that's a great statement to make there. Well done, Alex.
What's wrong? I just did it so it was easier. They're not real people. They're just units in a video game. I just did the hair color. I did it for the men too. I'm just saying it was just easier for me. The men have like short buzz cuts because this game came out in 2012, so it's of its era. So everything's brown and gray, and all the men have buzz cuts in the game. Just putting that out there.
So one of the negative points I wanted to bring later on is that everybody has the same body type, and I'm not even sure Exact same. So you get like scientist dudes that are just like 240 walking tank dudes. They're just like, bro, have you seen my clip chart, man?
And every woman in the game is supposed to be some like gung ho soldier who's like slightly muscly with like I don't know, like pixie body somehow. It doesn't make any sense. If you're in a battle, it does seem like a physique you'd have. Regardless, John's getting us off topic as usual. I'm trying not to say or here on the
You've been in training at
podcast.
this as well.
Well, I want to make the best sitting on the cartridge podcast that we can.
Excellent.
So,
all right,
that said, it has a wonderful gameplay loop, and I think you really do. The story isn't strong, but the story you get from the game keeps you going and keeps you wanting to see what happens, kind of, or just persevere with your guys. Go on.
If I can say one last thing before I think we're going to transition here in just a moment.
For
our listeners, rewind back just a couple of minutes. Listen to the way that Alex talks normally, and then go back and listen to when he talked about how easy the game is and how to make it totally winnable every single time. Listen to the excitement, listen to the energy that you don't normally hear from Alex. This is the effect that XCOM has. It's infectious, and everybody that I've known who's played through the game, they get that excited because that's exactly what makes it so special. The moments that you have.
I started to say it before the podcast, so I wanted to say it before the podcast. Sean, I was a little skeptical going into this game. I wasn't sure. Thank you for introducing me to this game. I really did enjoy it. I'm still playing it. I quit playing to come do the podcast, just for people listening. I was in the midst of playing it. Go on.
So on that bombshell, I think we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to go into what we find frustrating with XCOM Enemy Unknown. We'll be back in a sec. All right, welcome back. We are talking of XCOM Enemy Unknown, and we are going to talk about what we found very, very frustrating. Alex looks like he wants to go first. So
I do, in fact. So as I remarked to my lovely co-hosts throughout the week, this game kind of reminds me of a game you might not think of immediately, but Valkyria Chronicles. It reminds me a lot of Valkyria Chronicles, because in that game you're also moving a squad of usually around those squads get a little bit bigger. You get like 10 characters.
Yeah, they did.
But there were a lot of battles where there were some battles beginning the game where it was like 6 to 8, and it kind of reminded me of that. And that you move around the battlefield and you position your guys undercover and take shots at the enemy trying to get them down. One thing I liked about that game was when you began to attack, you could free aim. So your characters, it was in XCOM, you point them at the guy you want them to hit.
And 98% chance hit, they still managed to raise their gun and miss somehow. It's
today I had the first 99% chance miss. They had a shotgun and the shells literally went up at a 90-degree angle. How does that happen? How?
That's XCOM, man. That became a meme for a long time. So, like the gun in the barrel in the alien's face, and then like the shot after is just like miss.
So
did not connect.
In Valkyria Chronicles, if you were aiming your weapon, if you aimed at the body, you were almost guaranteed to hit, especially like if you were pretty close to them. But if you aim for the head, it would do extra damage, but your shots might miss unless you line it up just right. I would have liked to see something like that in XCOM, I think. And also, another thing about Valkyria Chronicles was, if you shot one person and they died, the bullets from your shooting would keep going and would hit the person behind them if they were lined up. And in XCOM, you don't really get that mechanic, but there are times where I would shoot an alien, the alien would die, they'd collapse. The animation of my guy shooting would keep going, and it would hit the alien behind them, and it's just not doing any damage. And it's like, well, realistically, if they're firing 4 shots from their gun, the alien dies in 2, and the 2 keep going after that, the alien next to or behind them should be hit. I think that would have helped the game. I think that would have been a little bit more interesting. I think another thing that kind of bothered me with Enemy Unknown was that there are only 4 camera angles. I'm rotating it like Final Fantasy Tactics. And Enemy Within, which I played, there are 8, which is a little bit better. But I think what I would have liked seeing is the ability to kind of like lock off any one character and like move the camera around what they can see, just to kind of get my bearings on what sort of cover, what options I have. That would have helped me personally. As I said earlier, the graphics are pretty bare. They're all brown and gray. Music's not really there. If you're playing this game, you're playing it for the gameplay. I think I originally I was gonna dismiss the story too, but I feel like the narrative is told by your experience with your characters, not necessarily the background. Like, I don't even know why I'm called. I don't even know why my organization's called XCOM. I don't know why other countries, why I have to fight for funding for like $100. You know, like
it's not. No, it's not dollars. It's some other currency.
what?
It looks like a dollar.
It's euro.
Not everybody
it's some
uses
stupid
dollars,
made up
Alex.
currency
Okay,
like pound or euro or whatever.
Some of us have other currencies. There are other currencies outside the US. As weird as that sounds.
You know what though? I should put out there. I've been to Europe, and guess what currency they take? American dollar bills.
American dollar bills or American credit cards?
American dollar bills. Had to happen. Anyway.
Yeah, they have to take them off the market just so they can burn them. That's what they do with them afterwards, Alex.
Anyway, I think the narrative of the story is weak. Like, but that kind of goes along with what the game is, because you're really here for the game. That said, just want to emphasize the story is told through your characters.
So just to give a bit of context for anyone who hasn't played the game, like when you go back to base, there are 3 other characters that interact with you. The commander, I don't
know. Does anyone know their names? What are their names?
One is Valer or Veher. And
You're
she's
around these characters every cutscene of the entire game.
The girl. Okay, let's just call it the girl.
The lady
let's
scientist.
Be really misogynistic. Yeah.
The bald engineer.
The
crew cut guy who just advisors tells you what to do.
Yeah.
There you go.
They may as well be faceless. They may as well not be there, but they are, and they're bad. They're pretty damn bad. But
in the anthill you build.
Yeah,
it is. It's an anthill.
It is actually, yeah. They are bad. There's not really too much to them. I think the story is okay. I think the characters the story is okay. You're given motivation to move through things, and the game comes up with motivation for you to care about what happens.
Why is my organization called XCOM? I never learned that.
Sean, help me out here. Why is it called XCOM?
I don't have the first clue.
No, neither do I.
So let me come to the game's defense slightly, because I want to say, part of the reason I picked this game was actually because I wanted to talk about the story. Because I'll go ahead and plug John's channel, Woodhouse 204 on YouTube. He had done a video a couple of months ago saying that Final Fantasy Tactics was the best strategy RPG, and the only reason XCOM couldn't compete was because of the lack of the story. So I said, okay, we got to talk about this. We've got to dissect it. And as I played it today, or this last couple of weeks, I think the alien story is really good. I think the story about the bad guys is as well fleshed out as a game like Final Fantasy Tactics. It may not be as interesting. I don't know. If you like church conspiracies and ancient demon crystals like a Final Fantasy game, then Tactics is your thing. But the enemy in this game is really interesting. The way that it goes from alien race to alien race, and it's not great in Enemy Unknown. It's better in Enemy Within, because they give the aliens sort of retaliations, and they give you more of their perspective. A lot of the perspective you get comes in the final mission, which is kind of an exposition dump, which I don't love.
That's like
I feel like I know the bad guys pretty well. Like, I understand what they're about, what they're doing. But on the human side, your guess is as good as mine. Why is it called XCOM? Where did all of this come from? it's not well said. I will say I know the engineer's name is Shen. I only know that because in XCOM 2 there's a whole storyline about Shen.
There is.
There's a DLC called Shen's Last Gift. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have the first clue.
Before we move away from the aliens, just for a moment, I think that the designs for the characters, like Alex said before, the character designs are pretty bland. They're not that great. The alien designs, on the other hand, are really good. I really liked all the alien designs.
Alien designs are interesting. It doesn't make sense that I can customize that. I can't. So when I hire soldiers to come work for XCOM, because there's an alien invasion, for some reason I need to hire these people to defend the planet, because that makes sense.
You got to pay them more than the subway fee as well. Yeah.
No, not only. Hold up. I want to be clear here. I can't pick if I want an assault person or a heavy unit or a support unit. I can pick what color hair, what skin and hair color they have.
I feel like that is a thing you can get in Enemy Within. It's kind of like an upgrade path, but I think you can.
Then why? That. Okay, but why have it as an upgrade path? Why not just have it as default? That just seems a lot easier.
It's meant to be, because not everybody has the. You can't pick what skills somebody has.
Here, this is another thing that bothered me. So I'm going to reference another strategy RPG here. There's a game called Fell Seal where once you unlock a class, you can pay money to get that same character class onto your team, and you can pay extra to get them to the level your guys are at. Why can't in this game I pay more money to hire on a captain who is an assault person and at that level, and it's extra money. It's not like a rookie soldier, but pay extra to get that unit.
I can't answer that, but I feel like a lot of those questions are addressed. Like, so obviously Sean and I have both played the sequels and the expansions that go with those. I feel like a lot of the things that you're having an issue with there are actually addressed in those.
Well, fair enough. I haven't played those. I am going to say, though, I'm addressing I played the base version, and these are shortcomings that I saw. I think...
So, in my defense, what I will say is that you're describing issues that you have, and in my head, in my fish brain that I have, it's going, well, hang on, that's not true. And I can't remember if I'm thinking of XCOM 2, War of the Chosen, a mod that I've played.
Something else. I get you.
I can't remember exactly where it is, but I feel like that is addressed somewhere.
The only other thing I was going to come up with that end game of, because I did play through this whole game. One thing that was frustrating for me was I needed a certain number of weapon fragments at some point, and I was a little low.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, so the version I played, Enemy Unknown, the base version, there are 3 tiers of weapons. So there's your base, like assault, like earth weapons. And then there's laser weapons, and then there's plasma weapons.
Yep.
At that point, I had plasma weapons. I had laser weapons I built, but I wasn't using them. Why can't I go back and break them down back into weapon fragments?
Alex, do you know how you get weapon fragments?
Kill enemies, not blow them
without
up?
using with rockets. Yes. So your rocket and grenade approach of blowing up all of the enemies, it blows up all of the weapon fragments.
I knew that. I figured it out after 2 missions when I wasn't getting any weapon fragments. I figured that out. I still don't understand why I can't break down the weapons I already have into weapon fragments.
So we've gone a little bit off track. We're talking a little bit of the mechanics. I'd love to talk more about the story on this, because this is something that I'm not sure that it needs to be fixed. And I think Alex has kind of alluded to this, but I want to probe the idea a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
XCOM doesn't have a great background as an organization. We all agree that the leaders are kind of blank faceless.
What are their names again?
Yeah. Right. And so you could make the argument, oh, well, maybe you need more story. You mentioned Valkyria Chronicles. Valkyria Chronicles has named characters, like basically, these characters can't die in a mission. If you do, you fail the mission. And would XCOM be better if we did that? And my gut tells me no, it wouldn't be. And I think the reason for that is because, as you've both mentioned, what makes this game kind of special is the way that you, as a player, you kind of project your own stories onto these people. The story of these people is the missions that you have. It's the time that this guy panicked for the second time and shot at my teammate, so I had to put him in a robot suit so that he'd never panic again. Would the game be better if the commander was a character that you could control? And maybe you put him in a tank like you do in Valkyria Chronicles so that he's mostly impervious to death. I don't know. But in a game where being difficult and where every single character is expendable because it sort of reinforces how difficult the game is, would it ruin things if you were to have these super powerful NPCs? I guess you could rebalance it, but I want to get your thoughts.
Yes and no, but I'm going to correct you on one thing. So in Valkyria Chronicles, they're named, but they can die.
Yeah, they can.
Some of them can, but not all of them.
Most of them can. You have like a very small handful, and they can get like injured and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
let's say you had an Alicia. For those who have played Valkyria Chronicles,
Okay.
Alicia she's one of the main characters. She's also one of the best characters. She's really, really good.
Yeah.
She has a lot of great perks. Put a character of Alicia's caliber into XCOM, and how much does that change the game?
I mean,
so I think that's a choice though between the developers to either force these characters that they've designed onto you, or you kind of create your own story, which is what XCOM went for. And it actually plays out so well for them because in XCOM 2 they have workshop support in the Steam version where you can have characters come in. Whenever I play XCOM 2 now, I have the cast of the Normandy from Mass Effect come in to be my squad. Does it take away the fact that Liara dies sometimes? No, it does not. It makes it worse. But you wouldn't have that option in Valkyria Chronicles or any other JRPG for that matter, except for maybe Disgaea. The idea that you can create like your own squad and name the everyone involved, like it just gives extra importance and just brings back the fact that you do get attached to these soldiers. Like when you see the map when you finish your mission and you come back and you see your little guys on the little treadmills working out so that they don't die in the next mission, you go in there like, yeah, keep going, mate. We're gonna make it through together. And then they panic and die, and you feel heartbroken.
I'm with John on this one. I think it's a developer choice. I think you could. So I'm not. Hear me out. I don't think you should have an XCOM. I don't think you should have any characters that are invincible. What I would have enjoyed is having a pool of maybe 50 characters with a backstory where you can pick like Sean James is an assault character. You can pick them and put them in your game or in your squad or whatever. Amy Smith is a support character. You can choose her and they have like a little backstory. And then if all those characters die, then they do it Valkyria Chronicles. And that now you can recruit generic, faceless guys. I liked it in Valkyria Chronicles. I'm not talking about the main characters. I'm talking about the characters you could put, that you could normally recruit, where they did have a little backstory. They all had their little quirks and little differences, and they had a unique design. So I think that having that in XCOM would kind of marry the concepts in a way that might add a little bit more depth to these characters. They can still die, but on a normal playthrough, you're probably not going to go through 50 guys unless you're playing like John. So
one of the things we keep going back to is the similarities between. You really want to talk, Sean? Sorry, I'm jumping on your time here. One of the things I think is important is that we keep comparing XCOM to Valkyria Chronicles, and I think the choices that Alex likes in that is directly down to the fact that Valkyria Chronicles was made for a console game, and it has like lots of things that are down to the constraints of being on a console game. XCOM, which is being developed by the Civilization team, they're known for making things for PC. They make things from a PC perspective, whether that is down to controls or design and the background of everything that goes with that. So I think, like we said before, everything is a developer choice, obviously, but I think they're just like going with what they know for both sides of this.
You're not wrong. Like they kind of make it like a Sims. Like I get like that's what it feels like. I think they could have cheaply and easily injected a little bit more story by giving like your first like 30 or to 50 characters names and little backstories, and then when they die, I'm just saying what they could have done that would have made the story easier. Frankly, no one's playing this for the story. If you're playing this game and having a great time, you don't care at all about these characters. You care about your units.
I care about DJ. I want him to make it through.
You care about ghosts. You care about your little redhead person, your blue-haired person, your green-haired person, your yellow-haired person. You care about them, but you don't care about anything else. I was just saying one thing they could have helped out with. When you mentioned it being more like a console game, one thing that really would have helped me out while playing this is if I could have rotated the camera to go overhead and look down. That would have been great. You mentioned the controls, and normally keyboard and mouse are no for controls, but I found myself wanting to like click between tiles because even the mouse, there are times where I clicked the wrong thing. Yeah, because Sean was complaining about the phone. There were times for me where it's like I was rolling my eyes, like I did not mean to click there.
Yeah, the controls is one of my main minuses against the game too. It's not great, and just for your information, Alex, like it doesn't get better. Like in XCOM 2, they tried to bring some more stuff in, and they don't quite fix it either.
Sean, what do you not like about this wonderful game that you love?
Oh, I think this was a good stopping point for a break. I think we need a whole segment all on its own to talk about RNG.
Excellent. Okay, well, on those orders from Sean, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
The shotgun blast went straight up.
And we're back. We have refreshed ourselves, and we are ready to talk some RNG troubles. Sean, you brought those up before.
Yes, and Alex sort of started to talk about it, but I want to dive deep on this one because this is, I think, the one that comes up the most when people talk about this game. Yes, and it's a contentious one. So let me start by saying this is not a conversation about whether or not XCOM is fair. I understand how probabilities work, and I'm not here to argue whether the RNG in this game is bad or that it doesn't work. I get it. If it's a 90% chance to hit, it's going to miss 1 out of 10 times. It feels more often because that 1 out of 10 always feels really bad, but I get it. I'm sure the probabilities are accurate. But with all of that said, the RNG in this game just isn't fun. When you flank an enemy with your assault and you launch one of their rapid fire double attack moves and you miss twice in a row, sucks. And it's happened to me in this playthrough. Each hit was an 85% chance due to the enemy having some kind of a natural evade, and I missed both of them. Again, statistically unlikely but not impossible, but those types of moves usually take a lot of planning, and often you'll spend an ability to get into range, right? Maybe your assault used his run and gun to get way out there because you know with a double shot, you only have to hit one of them. And so to have your planning and your resource management rewarded with a big old whiff. And before any of your comments, I know that you can turn this off with second wave. There's an option to turn it off where if you flank an enemy, you never miss. And the same is true of them. If they flank you, they never miss. But this is about the base game, which is the ideal version of the game. And in the ideal version of the game, those moments just aren't fun. And I think it gets back to what Alex said earlier about his experience. It makes you risk averse because the chance of failure is always just high enough that you don't want to make the dangerous play. And so you don't have as much fun with the game as you should be. And so I want to talk about RNG because I'm not opposed to RNG altogether, but I do think that RNG at times sucks the fun out of the game. On the other hand, it's a game known for difficulty. So I'm just like, how do you keep the brutal, notorious difficulty while eliminating what I would consider to be bad RNG experiences? And so, Alex, you are a man who has made his name making notoriously difficult strategy RPGs.
Oh, I thought you were going to call them bad. Okay.
Well, notoriously difficult. You can have your own opinions, but RNG is a part of those. You know, what are your thoughts on good RNG, bad RNG as it comes to difficulty?
I'll be honest, it's frustrating, but I really thought the RNG in this was fine. Granted, hear me out. I can only speak for the base game that I played. And the base game that I played, I found that I was better rewarded taking 6 shots that with like 20%, 20 or 30% chance of hitting versus 2 shots that had 90% chance of hitting. And that kind of sounds silly. But what I realize is that if I'm not putting my guys in danger, I would rather take the shot that isn't putting me at risk. And 30% chances, like that's a third of the time that it's hitting. So if I can do that 6 times, well, I'm probably gonna hit it at least twice and kill them, and that's okay. Like, and that's how I was rewarded. That's how I understood the game, and that's where my opening statement was. It's not that hard. I think the frustrating thing is, and one thing I got frustrated by when playing was that, and it didn't keep me from coming back to the game, but it does get boring if you keep playing that way. I had more fun with the game when on the latter half, when Sean mentioned some enemies I hadn't seen, I started taking more risks. That also resulted in my last death that I had at the end of the game was that I had one. There are these not so pleasant enemies called the ethereals, where they can really use their minds to do some twisted things to you. And one of my guys got attacked by an ethereal, and it was literally the last ethereal of the game in the very last part of the last stage. And I had all 6 characters not undercover surrounding this ethereal not undercover. And I swear I shot at that thing like 18 times before it died. I mean, they were all just taking shot after shot after shot after shot, and it was missing or being redirected or missing or being redirected. Eventually, I got it down, of course, but I lost the guy doing it, and it was the last mission, so I didn't worry about it. Whatever.
What I will say is that there are certain character traits that actually reward you playing more risky. The assault class in particular, if you get so as characters get enough kills and enough missions under their belt, they get
they level up like any other
they
RPG.
level up and they get promoted, and they get perks. And the assault one in particular gets a particular perk that rewards kills done in run and gun. They get 50% extra crit chance, and that in particular, like, it rewards you for running and gunning, which as you do, it makes you the skill is you sprint towards your enemy and basically put yourself in harm's way to get the kill, to finish them off, and getting in there and playing like Rambo, weirdly enough. And the game rewards you for doing that.
My assault guy was always fully armored out. I would rush her, do running gun, rush her ahead, put her under cover, take a shot, and then really just see the enemy so my sniper and everything else could get it. But she was really almost like a scout for me, and that's how I played her. Because I noticed you said 50% increase in crit chance. That's not 50% chance increase in hitting.
No, but there are ways around that too. You can get like accessories and things that increase aim. You can get your heavy to have like holographic aiming.
I had all that, and it was never. I never felt like the RNG was fair, and I think it was. I'm not doubting it. It just never feels fair. I don't see the enemy hit percent chance, but there have been times where it felt like I shot an enemy from a certain distance 4 times and didn't hit any of those times, and they shoot at me from the same distance and kill one of my guys or put them in critical or whatever. So that's what doesn't feel fun.
One of the things I'd definitely like to point at for what Sean said earlier about like hit percentages and RNG is I wonder how people would feel if it wasn't a set number percentage. If it was just more a vague sort of like unlikely to hit. very likely to hit. If you put more vague terms upon it, the reason you're not taking your 20% chance to hit is because you know it's 20%. In your head, that sounds like a very low number and an unlikely event to hit. But if it's a more vague term, you'll be just like, it could hit. I think some semantics on like the terms, when you say 99% chance to hit, you're just like, oh, this is going to hit. There's no way in hell this won't happen. And then when it does, you're outraged because if something were to say incredibly likely to hit, I would feel better about it missing.
See, I think you can have some gradations between that. So, for instance, the 99% chance I had that miss, it's burned into my memory. I'll remember this till I die. Is I had a character with a shotgun, and on one tile, so one square.
Mm-hmm.
The next square was the alien, and they took the shot. It had a 99% chance of hitting. They fired it straight at the alien's face, and the bullets coming out of the shotgun went straight up in the air. Yeah. They didn't get scared and shoot up. I think if they had done like an animation of like my guy getting startled and like shooting up in the air or something like that, because that wasn't the only time that happened. I had times where I shoot my rifle and I see the animation, I see the bullets hitting the alien, and it says miss.
Yep.
And same thing where they shoot me, and I see the animation of the plasma rifle hitting my characters, and it says miss. And I think in our heads, like there's a disconnect there of this should have hit, or I see this hitting, and it's not. Now, if there was like a mechanic where like, hey, your gun only grazed them and it only did 1 damage, okay, I can. That's a middle ground. So, my character got scared and like shot up in the air. Go on, John. I'm sorry.
Right, grazing definitely a thing that happens in XCOM 2. In XCOM 2, they also introduce melee weapons a lot more, and they are guaranteed hits. Unless
they're guaranteed hits with an upgrade. As a base, they can still miss, but once they've been upgraded, they are a guaranteed hit.
Hey, John, real quick, what game are we playing again? I'm sorry, I forgot. Can you remind me? I forgot the name of the game we're playing.
Okay, you're trolling, but let me point out to you that not everybody who is going to listen to this will have like impeccable brains that remember everything. Some of them will be like me and forget things. Fair enough. These games have already come out. Like, you can't just say like, oh, well, this is the game we're playing. Forget the sequels. You can't do that.
Well, that's fantastic. I am critiquing this game based on what I played. Yeah. And I'll say this, when talking about the RNG, it's frustrating that I have a gun that's shooting bullets straight up.
And that's why I told you that they give you a melee weapon that is a guaranteed hit on an upgrade. Thank you, Sean. I
may have bought XCOM 2 today.
Yeah, you should.
I did. Yeah. I did.
I find it interesting that what I'm hearing here is I don't much care for the RNG making these things happen, but let's go ahead and justify why it should exist at all. Because I've got to say, I'd go the opposite direction and say because it's frustrating, I'd rather think about ways to get rid of it. Like, just let's not have RNG. Let's find other ways to make it difficult, because you can do that. Games can be difficult without chances to hit.
Give us an example then. Like, I'd like to hear that.
So the example or the framework that works, I'm cribbing this off of Game Maker's Toolkit. Mark talks about input randomness and output randomness. And input randomness is things that happen before you take an action. Output randomness is things that happen after you take an action. So examples of input. Where are the enemies? How many enemies are there? What do they do on their turn? When do the UFOs show up? Basically, everything else in the game is input randomness. There's all kinds of random stuff that happens in this game, and it isn't fair. But every time it happens, you're like, okay, it happened. Now what do I do? Whereas chance to hit, it's like, well, if I miss, what can I do? Now, there are people within the XCOM community who would say, I think Alex is probably one of them, output randomness becomes input randomness. And what I mean by that is you never, ever take a shot without 2 other guys back up so that if you miss, they can take those shots. And that's true. When you play XCOM, you learn you never take a shot without having somebody else to back it up if you miss. But it's like that means you have to limit your creativity. You can't take really cool shots unless you've got somebody to back you up. So you just don't take as many of those cool shots. So here's my idea. Let's try to keep the game difficult, but let's try to eliminate some randomness. And it actually ties in perfectly to Alex. So Alex, thanks for teeing me up on grazing shots. What if we have damage that scales with distance instead of accuracy that scales with distance? So narratively, this kind of seems odd, right? If you're shot, you're shot. But mechanically, it would be super interesting. Let's add another layer. Let's imagine that every single enemy in this game always gets a reaction shot, which means every single turn when you see aliens, you've got to figure out, okay, so how do I get around their shots?
I was always going to say, I think they should always have reaction shots. So they have, yeah.
But, but maybe it's that the reaction shots can be disabled. They can kind of be disabled right now if you suppress an enemy, but there's not enough ways to remove reaction shots. But, what if we start to add in things like, if you shoot an enemy, you get a chance to remove their Overwatch. And essentially what I'm thinking about is essentially creating more variety in the classes. So this is kind of just as I thought about it. Machine guns are super inaccurate in this game. In this modified version of the game, they're not inaccurate in the sense that they can't hit. They're inaccurate in the sense of you only hit them with a bullet or two, so you don't do a whole lot of damage. But now strategically, the machine gunners become the perfect knockout Overwatch thing. Okay, I'm only going to do 1 damage because I'm across the map, but I know I'm going to hit them and knock them out of their Overwatch. And machine gunners typically get 2 shots if you upgrade them that way. So now they're my strategic Overwatch knockout guys. Or what if the smoke grenades that nobody ever uses on the supports?
What? No, are you kidding me? I use.
I mean, if you use them, that's fine. I never put myself in a position where I needed that extra defense. So maybe that's just me.
I guess what? That's when you park your guys and you throw a smoke grenade and they all shoot out at everything that comes their way. It's
true. But fantastic. what if smoke grenades prevented people from shooting you with Overwatch? So you could run through the smoke. I don't know. I was just trying to think of interesting things. But
I think you're right. There are probably ways to make the game's mechanics better. But going by John's account and some of your account, it sounds like they fixed a lot of these things in the DLC and sequel. That said, I think I'm okay with the RNG. I really am. It's frustrating, but the game, again, the game I played, it rewarded careful tactical maneuvers. Now, if you played this game, and this is how I played it, the first 75% of the game is I don't want to lose any guys, so I don't have to. So I played as carefully and slowly as possible. And that's not always fun, but it's satisfying. It's satisfying to go through, roll through maps where you are outgunned, where you are outnumbered, where you are outarmed, and not have a single one of your characters get hurt. Because you played and you directed them well. That's where the game gets you. That's what I felt. That's where I get the fire in my belly about this. That's what keeps me going in the game. Now, later on in the game, you get stronger armors. You might take bigger risks. I got titanium armor, I think, or whatever armor where it's like
Titan armor.
Titan armor. There you go.
Yeah.
Where like my health, I had it on my assault girl, and her health went through the roof. Now it's like, man, do I even need cover? Like, I mean, shoot, I can, and I mean, I got it kind of, I think I got it a little early. I think it was like the month thing, like the month where I could stand out there and it's like, man, every attack's doing 1 damage to me. And like my guy has like 20 health. With Sean's idea of doing grazes, the only thing is, I think to account for that, you'd have to increase health on each unit, because for anyone who hasn't played this, like your base unit at the beginning of the game has like 3 health that you're fighting.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, obviously if you take 3 pot shots from across the map, that can be a little broken.
I think Sean's ideas have merit. The problem would be that you'd have to rebalance the entire game.
So
skills,
and that's where I think I'm okay.
Everything.
I'm okay with where the game's at. I think.
Me too. I am too.
It's
I think we should try
hard but
and
not fair, or
I think we
hard
should
but
try
fair.
and move towards our conclusions here because we're getting a little bit long here. Um, I am very happy with playing this game again. I wish I could have. If I get some free time and the million things that I have to do over the next couple of months, if I get some free time, I probably want to play War of the Chosen again. I want to revisit that game. It's incredibly hard. I had to stop because I was getting frustrated with it. This game, Enemy Unknown, Enemy Within, was frustrating a little bit because I made some mistakes and I paid very dearly for them.
Playing like Rambo.
Yeah, but since then I managed to recover, and I've been very happy with how the game has been going for me. I think that goes down to the game directness of it. The game realizing that I have a smooth brain and needed help along the way. Gents, how do you feel about the game overall?
I'd recommend this game to anyone who has any interest in RPGs or strategy games at all, really. Um, you know, that I think it's a great game for that. I
Yeah.
can't sing all of its merits, but it's probably in the top 10 strategy RPGs I've ever played. I played a lot.
Sean?
I mean, I think I said at the beginning, this is my 6th or 7th time playing the game, which should sort of speak for itself.
It does.
And for all that I could say that you could do things differently, and I'm still of the camp that there are better ways than using percentage chance to hits to make something difficult. You can get more creative, but the fact is that even if it could be better, it's still really, really great. And I'm sure I'll be playing it again in a couple of years.
Yeah. I agree. I think everyone here is on the positive side of XCOM, very much so.
Very much.
Yeah.
The only correction I have is I think I actually read this is a remake. I thought this is a remake of the original version, not a sequel. Maybe I'm wrong there.
It might well be.
Yeah, so you're right. It's certainly not that the previous game had happened, but I've not played the original enough to know how similar they are. My understanding is that the original is actually much harder.
I got the original on PlayStation 1 and I'm going to try it out. So I was curious.
Good luck.
Good luck with that.
I've heard it's like rip out your eyes difficult, so I'm looking forward to
it. Speaking of the PlayStation 1 though, I feel that's a good pivot towards what our next game will be. This time it's my pick, which is Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. Which is the beginning of the Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver franchise. It's unlike the other games, but it sets a lot of the tropes and the story going in that very famous story. I'm looking forward to seeing this. I haven't played it since it came out in 1996 or 7. I think
1996. I looked it up.
Yeah, it's an old game.
It already. Yep.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be an interesting one.
It's going to be real exciting to talk about.
Yeah, if you like Zelda games or you like Legacy of Kain or Soul Reaver, those things, I feel like you should tune in next time and check that out. So let's wrap it up here, guys. Thank you very much for joining me, Alex. Yeah, thank you very much for joining me, Sean.
Yep, thank you, John.
I've been your host, John, and we shall see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.